Nutty Putty Cave accident. Alright, let's talk about one of the most terrifying cave disasters ever, the Nutty Putty Cave incident. This isn't just any tragic accident. It's the kind of story that burrows into your mind and refuses to leave. Imagine this. It's the night before Thanksgiving 2009. John Edward Jones, a 26-year-old medical student and father-to-be, goes spelunking in Utah's Nutty Putty Cave, a notorious labyrinth of tight, winding passages. He wasn't a rookie. He had cave experience. But that night, a single miscalculation sealed his fate. John thought he was crawling into a passage called the birth canal, but he was wrong. Instead, he had wedged himself into a death trap, a passage only 10 inches wide. That's smaller than a microwave opening. Even worse, he was stuck headfirst upside down, at a brutal 70-degree angle. Blood was rushing to his head, his limbs were going numb, and every breath became a battle. Rescue teams scrambled for hours, even days, trying everything. Jackhammers, a pulley system, even chiseling the rock, but the cave itself seemed to be fighting back. At one point, they almost had him free, but then the equipment failed. The last conversation John had was about angels and demons. Then, silence. And here's the part that haunts me. They couldn't even retrieve his body. The cave was simply too dangerous. So, they sealed it shut, making it his tomb forever. It's a brutal reminder that nature doesn't negotiate, and that sometimes even the best efforts just aren't enough. Thai Cave Rescue 2018. On June 23, 2018, 12 young soccer players and their coach entered the Tham Luang Nang Nong Cave in Thailand and vanished. For 9 agonizing days, no one knew if they were alive. Floodwaters had trapped them deep inside a pitch-black labyrinth. The cave was so complex that even elite divers struggled to navigate it. Then, on July 2nd, 2 British cave divers made a miraculous discovery. All 13 were alive, huddled on a rock ledge nicknamed Pattaya Beach. The relief was immense, but the real challenge had just begun: how to get them out. The rescue operation became a global effort, with over 1,000 people involved, including Thai Navy SEALs, elite divers, and specialists from Australia, the US, China, and Europe. But the mission was perilous. On July 5th, former Thai Navy SEAL Saman Kanan tragically died while placing oxygen tanks inside the cave, a stark reminder of the risks. The daring escape unfolded over 3 days. Each boy was sedated to prevent panic, strapped to a diver, and carefully maneuvered through narrow, flooded tunnels, some barely wide enough for a human body. The entire world watched in suspense. By July 10th, they were all out. Against all odds, the operation succeeded. Australian cave diver Richard Harris played a key role, helping sedate the boys and strategize the evacuation. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a testament to human resilience, teamwork, and courage. A miracle made possible by heroes willing to risk it all. Sand Cave Accident 1925. Picture this: a daring cave explorer, a hidden underground world, and a disaster that would grip the entire nation. This is the tragic tale of Floyd Collins, the man who ventured into the darkness and never came back. Floyd Collins wasn't just any explorer. He was a cave enthusiast in Kentucky's Cave Wars era, a time when rival cave owners fought to attract tourists. Floyd had already discovered Crystal Cave in 1917, but it was too remote to be profitable. Then he heard of Sand Cave, a promising location right by the roadside. If he could turn it into an attraction, he'd strike gold. On January 30th, 1925, Floyd squeezed into Sand Cave armed with only a kerosene lantern. The passages were suffocatingly tight. At one point, he had to crawl on his stomach, pushing his lantern ahead of him. Then, disaster struck. A 27-pound rock collapsed on his ankle, pinning him in place. Alone, deep underground, with no way out. Rescue efforts began, drawing engineers, miners, and reporters from all over the country. One journalist, Skeets Miller, crawled into the cave multiple times to interview Floyd, winning a Pulitzer Prize in the process. But as days passed, the situation worsened. Cave collapses, rain, and bitter cold hindered progress. The entire nation held its breath. 17 days later, rescuers finally reached him, but it was too late. Floyd had succumbed to exposure. His body was initially left in Sand Cave, sealed off like an ancient tomb before being recovered months later. Mossdale Caverns Accident, 1967. This is one of the darkest chapters in British caving history. A tragedy that unfolded beneath the unforgiving Yorkshire moors in 1967. 10 cavers set out to explore the notorious Mossdale Caverns, but only 4 would make it back. The rest were trapped by a sudden surge of water, turning the cave into a death trap. Mark Forbes, one of the 4 who exited early, realized something was horribly wrong when she returned and found the entrance completely submerged. Without hesitation, she sprinted across the desolate moors nearly 4 kilometers to raise the alarm. Rescue teams arrived, but the elements were merciless. Rain had swollen Mossdale Beck, and the entrance was inaccessible. They dug trenches, diverted water, did everything they could, but nature was unyielding. It wasn't until the following day that rescuers finally entered the cave. What they found was harrowing. 5 bodies in the far marathon crawls. The 6th was missing. Bob Leakey, a veteran caver, led a desperate search, but it was too late. The final victim was discovered the next day. Then came a controversial decision. The coroner ruled that the cave should be sealed. Concrete was poured into the entrance, effectively making the cavern their tomb. Years later, the site was reopened, and the cavers' colleagues from the University of Leeds Speleological Association gave them a final resting place deep inside the system, in a chamber ominously named Mud Caverns. To this day, it remains the deadliest caving disaster in British history. A memorial plaque above the entrance marks the tragedy, and on the moors, a cairn stands directly above where their bodies were found. A stark reminder of the price paid in the pursuit of exploration. Riesending Cave Rescue 2014. Picture this. You're nearly a kilometer underground, surrounded by pitch-black tunnels, and suddenly, boom, a rockfall crashes down, striking your head. You're trapped, concussed, and the only way out is an excruciating multi-day rescue effort through one of the most unforgiving cave systems on Earth. This isn't a movie plot. It's exactly what happened to German speleologist Johann Westhauser in June 2014 inside the infamous Riesending Cave. Westhauser and 2 companions were deep inside Germany's longest and deepest cave when disaster struck. A falling rock hit him hard, despite his helmet, causing a traumatic brain injury. With no cell signal, no quick exit, and no way to move him alone, one of his team members had to make a grueling 10-hour climb back to the surface to call for help. Then came one of the most extraordinary cave rescues in history. Over 700 people from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Italy mobilized for an 11-day operation. It was a logistical nightmare, hauling medical personnel, equipment, and supplies through a dark, labyrinth cave filled with narrow passages and deadly drops. They couldn't use machinery. Everything had to be done by sheer human effort. Rescuers even had to use their own bodies as counterweights to maneuver his stretcher. Against all odds, they pulled it off. On June 19th, after nearly 2 weeks underground, Westhauser was brought to the surface and airlifted to safety. He made a full recovery and even, shockingly, returned to caving. The aftermath? Nearly $1 million in costs, a cave sealed off to prevent thrill seekers from attempting their own death-defying descent, and over a ton of garbage left behind by the rescue effort, which took 6 years to clean up. Plura Cave Diving Accident, 2014. In February 2014, 5 highly skilled Finnish divers entered Norway's Plura Cave system, an unforgiving labyrinth of submerged tunnels and pitch-black voids. 2 never came out, and the authorities, they called the bodies unrecoverable. But 4 of their friends weren't willing to accept that. The Plura Cave system is a diver's dream or nightmare. You start in a serene, almost mystical pond, but within minutes, you're swallowed by freezing darkness, navigating razor-thin passages over 130 meters down. At this depth, the rules change. Your body is a ticking time bomb of decompression sickness, your breath a delicate balance of oxygen and poison, and should anything go wrong, help is not coming. On that fateful February dive, things did go wrong. Jari Hutarinian got tangled in a narrow passage. His breathing turned erratic, and in seconds, he was gone. Patrick Gronkvist, his friend, watched in horror, but he knew he couldn't afford panic. He pressed on. Then the second team arrived, only to find their friend's lifeless body blocking their path. Vesa Rantanen made the brutal decision to push forward, struggling past the corpse in a life-or-death crawl. The others weren't so lucky. Another diver panicked, lost control, and drowned. A third barely made it out alive after an 11-hour fight against the abyss. The cave was sealed, the bodies declared lost. But for the survivors, there was no peace. 7 weeks later, defying all logic, they returned. This time, not as explorers, but as rescuers. Because sometimes, the greatest dives are not about survival, but about bringing your friends home. Boesmansgat Cave Drowning, 2005. Imagine descending into the absolute darkness, deeper than most people will ever go. You're alone, your only company is the cold pressure of the abyss, and the remains of another diver who never made it back. That's exactly where Australian cave diver Dave Shaw found himself on January 8, 2005, inside South Africa's Boesmansgat Cave, one of the deepest freshwater caves in the world. His mission? Retrieve the body of Dion Dreyer, a young diver who had been trapped there for over a decade. Shaw had already set a world record by reaching 271 meters in this cave, but his real challenge was yet to come. He had promised Dreyer's father he would bring his son's remains back to the surface. With a team of expert divers, he meticulously planned the operation, knowing full well that one mistake could cost him his life. The descent was smooth. Within minutes, Shaw reached Dreyer's body, but something went terribly wrong. As he tried to cut the remains loose, Dreyer's gear was stuck in the mud, the body unexpectedly buoyant. The nylon line entangled Shaw, turning the recovery into a death trap. His last moments were recorded by the camera on his helmet, capturing his struggle before the abyss swallowed him whole. And then, the most chilling twist. Days later, when divers attempted to retrieve Shaw's equipment, both bodies unexpectedly floated to the surface, bound together by fate and misfortune. The risks were clear, the warnings were given, but Dave Shaw went down anyway, and in the end, the cave decided it would give back not one, but two lost souls. Gouffre de la Pierre Saint Martin accident 1952. In the heart of the Pyrenees, hidden within the earth's depths, lies Gouffre de la Pierre Saint Martin, a cave so deep it was once the stuff of legend. But in 1952, it became the site of one of the most harrowing tragedies in caving history. Marcel Lubens, a seasoned French potholer, had spent years pushing the limits of exploration. In this massive cavern, he and his team ventured deeper than anyone had before, driven by a mix of discovery and relentless pursuit of science. But beneath the surface, even the best laid plans can unravel in an instant. After days of grueling work, hauling supplies, mapping uncharted halls, and battling exhaustion, the team faced their greatest challenge yet, the return to the surface. Lubens was the first to ascend, trusting the winch system designed to pull him up. But at just 30 feet into the climb, the loop securing him gave way. He plummeted down to a 40-degree slope, rolling 100 feet, his body shattered upon impact. For 36 agonizing hours, his team fought to save him. A storm raged above, cutting off communication, and the already battered winch suffered failure after failure. Dr. Mary, a man who had faced disaster before, reached Lubens only to find the inevitable. By nightfall, he was gone. His comrades, undeterred by grief and exhaustion, performed one of the most daring ladder rescues in history. 800 feet of climbing under nightmarish conditions. They buried Lubens below ground, forever marking his sacrifice in the name of exploration. This was not just an accident. It was a testament to human resilience, the fragility of life, and the price we pay to uncover the unknown. Peak Cavern Accident 1959. Oscar Hackett Neil Moss was a bright, ambitious philosophy student at Balliol College, Oxford. But in March 1959, his thirst for adventure led him deep into Peak Cavern, one of England's most famous cave systems. What started as an exciting expedition turned into a horrifying tragedy that gripped the world. Moss descended an unexplored shaft, 300 meters from the entrance, and got wedged in a narrow crevice. Rescuers tried everything: ropes, ladders, and even an 18-year-old caver named June Bailey who risked her life to reach him. But the cave had other plans. Carbon dioxide built up in the cramped space, suffocating Moss as he remained stuck, helpless. His father, standing vigil at the cave's entrance, made a heartbreaking decision: leave his son where he lay. It was simply too dangerous to retrieve the body, so the passage was sealed, turning it into a tomb known today as Moss Chamber. The story spread worldwide, appearing in newspapers from Europe to Australia and America. It even inspired a novel, One Last Breath, and a haunting documentary, Fight for Life, the Neil Moss story. What makes this tragedy so chilling? It wasn't a violent accident. It wasn't a storm or a rock slide. It was a slow, agonizing realization. Moss was never getting out. A man trapped by his own ambition, forever buried in the darkness.